Then I have to mute it. All right, we are live, or at least we should be, if I did it right. Nope, got it, live streams. All right.
Great.
Yep.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Wednesday, April 12th, the Land and Water Conservation Committee meeting. We'll do roll call. Roll call shows all members are present. And we'll move on to item number 3, the approval and repair of the agenda. If everybody had a chance to take a look at the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. We'll need an approval and repair of last month's minutes. Hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes. If so, we'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. I'll second.
Motion by Nick, second by Garrett. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. We will move on to public comment period. We're going to do, we'll leave it open. We'll go up past the 20 minutes tonight because there's a lot of people in the public. I'm asking that we hold it to 3 minutes per person. I will hold my hand up like this when we're at about 10 seconds or so. I'll have a timer. So is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir, in a green shirt.
I'm Tyler Fry, 128 Braeburn Avenue in Casco, one of the houses affected by nitrates. I know in the last meeting we talked about, or there was discussion about having different studies done in the village to figure out what's going on with the nitrates. I think any discussion or study should have a hydrologist involved. The reason I say that is with the different houses, some houses don't have any nitrates, some have very high nitrates. Another thing that happened this week, my sump started running for the first time since I moved in there. We haven't had any substantial rain, I guess, in the last week, but it's been running continuously since Friday. Initially, when it started, it kind of smelled a little funny, did clear up. But a couple houses down, there's some pumps not even running, it's dry. I think that kind of highlights the fact that we have very unique soil and rock formations under that new subdivision in Casco. I just wanted to make that known to the committee.
Thank you.
I'm his next door neighbor and my sub pump hasn't ran at all. So, and I know the neighbor on the other side of me has got the same issue as you do, where it's been running nonstop. They even replaced the pump because they thought that was an issue and continue. They're like, where's all this water come?
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public wishes to speak? Keith?
Keith Bancroft, 1870 Pine Grove Road, Kewanee. So it's a normal spring in Kewanee County. The creeks, streams, and rivers are running chocolate brown, saturated with eroded soils from tilled agricultural fields. Brown water carrying fertilizer, manure, and all the toxic chemicals used in today's industrial agriculture. 100 years ago, farming practices encouraged by governmental programs combined with a drought created the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. The Homestead Act gave free farmland to any citizen that settled it and cultivated it for 5 years. World War I generated the demand for wheat that gave way to lower prices when the war ended, resulting in farmers plowing and planting more acres to make up for lost income. 100 years ago, there was little to no scientific information on the effects of tillage on soil biology, plant health, and erosion. Fast forward 100 years to 2023, we've learned a great deal about the plants, the relationship with soil biology, mycorrhizal fungi, exudates from plant roots, soil aggregates, and the killing effects of tillage and chemicals on plants and soil biology. Regenerative agricultural practices recognize active soil biology is necessary for healthy plants, just as active gut biome is necessary for healthy people. The relationship between soil bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and earthworms is essential to provide plants the critical nutrients necessary for wellness. Healthy soil biology has more organic matter that increases water holding capacity, for today's climate change weather events. Regenerative agricultural farming practices maximize profits over yield by reducing input costs and increasing nutrient densities of crops produced. I'm not going to read all the regenerative agricultural practices, I'll run out of time. But it's apparent that most Kewaunee County farms have not learned of regenerative agricultural practices, since a majority of agricultural farmland in Kewaunee County uses conventional tillage practices coupled with chemical fertilizers, herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, all of which kill good soil biology, produce less nutrient-dense plants, and contribute to the erosion of our soils and pollution of our waters. Soil is a biological system. It is not a chemistry set. Last week, the United Nations presented a 2-day regenerative agricultural practices workshop by Understanding Ag for farmers and the public. It is obvious from our spring erosion and polluted waters that Kewaunee County farmers and the soils and waters of Kewaunee County could greatly benefit from a similar educational experience that could lead to improved farming practices, less soil erosion, and water pollution. I am requesting Kewaunee County Land Water Conservation Committee make available educational workshops on regenerative agricultural farming practices to its farmers and the public. These practices should become common knowledge for all farmers and be implemented with the help of the Kewaunee Land and Water Conservation Committee, Wisconsin DNR, USDA, and the university system. We need this kind of healthy change to support all life on planet Earth.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Sandy Whitmiller on Black Ash Road. This is just a little bit of a reminder for the board, and not for you, Davina, I know you know this well, but for the board, especially those affiliated with the CAFOs, the animal factories here. We should be able to drink our own water, and we still can't. I drank my water during the winter. After that Arctic storm rolled through and everything froze solid, we were drinking our water and it was just fine. We had one rain, forgot about it, drank my water, and I was sick as a dog. I could barely leave the bathroom for 2 days. So obviously there's still crap flowing down into our wells. And this really, really needs to change. We've been saying this for more than a decade, just since I've been involved in this. And it gets pretty damn old, I gotta tell you. You guys need to step up and do what's right and get this water cleaned up.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about this, if
you state
anything
your
with the
name?
regulation.
Can you state your name,
I'm
please?
sorry, Lori Hanson, Algoma, Wisconsin. I'm just wondering about the farms regulating themselves. They've proved time and time again that they are not handling this in a true fashion. And I'm just wondering, we need to, take the fox out of the in charge of the hen house here. And we need to have some backup with this regulation and following the laws that are required. And I'm just wondering if there's been anything discussed about that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lisa Koshar at 108 West Avenue, Casco. I own a daycare in Casco. So I tell my kids, my job is to keep you safe and healthy. And that's what I'm trying to do. So it became known to me, somebody had mentioned that there was a meeting on January 10th to talk about proposed changes at Kennard Farms, which will be with the Cedron group. And that one of the things that are proposed there is that the water that is treated is going to be released in Casco Creek. Well, it's coming to me then. It's coming to our village at another level. We all know that. That's the flow line. I want to know what you're going to do to ensure that we are safe with that. Because according to that digital file that I received, that I asked the township for, it states in there that they are not allowed to give it to their cows, or that their processor will not accept their milk at this point. The second part of that, which is kind of scary in some aspects, there's probably a reason behind it more so, but that was said in that file. The other part of it too is that they can't use it as irrigation water either. So it is coming to us in the creek. Now, we've already had issues. My job is to keep those kids safe and healthy. So I want to know that they're aware of it here, that these are the processes that are happening. And I don't want to trade one thing for another. So if we already we don't know the exact source of that water right now and which fields or where it's coming from, but now it's coming down in our creek is the next option. And I want to know that Kewaunee County is going to take this seriously. You know, there's a number of people from that subdivision sitting in here right now. And when I heard that, it really upset me that this could be a potential source of contamination coming down our way, because we have no idea at this point what's proposed. So I'm hoping you will not only ensure the safety of my children at the daycare, but you will ensure the safety of Casco, the village, and the people who are surrounded it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Doug Fry, I got land over on Partridge Road, and I got Silver Creek that runs right through the middle of it. I don't have a residence on there, but I can tell you from hunting out on it, there was one day last year, I can guarantee I was sitting in my stand all day from morning to night, and I watched a minimum of 40 tankers get dumped in that field adjacent to mine. So I guess what I'm asking is, who's the one supposed to regulate that, if that was even excessive, which I'm thinking it probably was, but who's the one that monitors to make sure they're not putting too much, especially when you have a creek that's really nearby and it's going to run through there. It's a spring-fed creek. I can guarantee even right now, by looking at it, it's not clear. It's what as brown as it can be. Even when they're doing their spreading, it went from clear to brown. So I guess, and I realize there's a lot of red tape and political business in the end of lots of it. But somehow we got to stop this. And I just seen some other thing that some kind of a deal was cut with Kinnard. It's like, why are we cutting deals with this place? If it's not right, it's not right. Why we allow them, oh, we'll just find you, but you can continue on. That doesn't make sense to me. So maybe, someone get some answers to that, that'd be great.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else? Yes.
Sue Weiser from the town of West Kewaunee. I've been at this for a number of years now. Folks, as Earth Day, April 22nd approaches, please think about this. We are at an impasse in this county. For a number of years, Kewaunee County was a go-to county for the rest of Wisconsin to gain information, methods, enacting protective ordinances to combat and clean up water contamination problems and deal with the huge amounts of untreated liquid manure being spread. Through 2018, many positive steps were taken. Some continue. However, violations from a few Kewaunee County CAFOs in those industrial farms have resulted in substantial fines from the state. So something isn't working. We know the DNR needs to step up the oversight and enforcement of the permit that CAFOs exist under. It's hard to do when one person has a workload of 17 CAFOs in Kewaunee County and 2 in Brown County. And a county that currently relies on a system of voluntary self-reporting to try gaining an accurate annual amount of the total gallons of untreated liquid manure being spread throughout the area. Currently, there is 86% or less participation by area farmers. The nutrient management plans don't seem to be managing. And on the other hand, residents with sanitary systems must comply 100% with paying a licensed pumper for an inspection every 3 years and report the amount of waste pumped. In addition, an annual fee is charged by the county and fines are assessed for non-compliance. A few years back, it seemed the county was working for everyone, and many positive actions were taken for the health, welfare, and safety of all county residents. But things change. The current Land and Water Committee is now made up of a majority with CAFO interests. And we have a land and water department, which also has the responsibility of running the sanitation department. In addition, in need of additional staffing to fully fulfill their responsibilities to the public. So regarding Earth Day, our Door County neighbors are offering many events to celebrate the day on April 22nd and bring awareness to the fragility of our planet. One event Kewaunee County will have is the Royal Flush Parade, beginning April 15th. Look for multitudes of liquid manure laden tankers on all our highways and byways. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak?
Lynn Utesh. In 2016, I ran for the state assembly and I went up and down the streets in Casco. And multiple people told me about how they had issues with nitrates, so they couldn't drink their water. Since that time, I've seen that Village of Casco has yet to take down their for sale sign in the subdivision that is continuing to build homes in an area that knows that there's nitrate issues. Kewaunee County refuses to even admit that we have a problem in that area. And we now have a committee here that doesn't even choose to contact the US EPA because they think there's something wrong with how they dealt with a train derailment. Yet, they're more than willing to go with a industry funded environmental organization that is designed to keep the amount of money spent for environmental issues at a minimum. If you go on their website, you'll see that they are very, very well connected with the dairy industry all across the United States. It's their environmental organization of choice. Unfortunately, you're supposed to be protecting the people, not the CAFO industry. You're supposed to be taking care of the people. You should be choosing to follow along with Kewaunee Cares and Midwest Environmental Advocates and request that the US EPA comes here and does a study of what is causing the contamination in Kewaunee County and very specifically in the town of Casco, this village of Casco. And I think you would want to do that, if nothing more, to limit your liability. Here we have the village of Casco selling these lots without disclosing to the people that live there that you have a nitrate issue. They still have their sign out there. You think somebody at some governmental level would feel responsible to its citizens. And you would think that somebody at some level would think, geez, we're getting new people to move into our community, whether it's the village of Casco or Kewaunee County, and we don't even want to let them know that their well is probably going to be contaminated.
10 seconds.
Isn't that really nice for a welcoming committee to Kewaunee County? It's time that somebody actually stands up, get chapter 38, the manure haulers ordinance, put it in place, even though it's going to be at a detriment to those of you sitting at that table. Have the courage to do what's right for a change. It's time you do it. Because you all know that nutrient management plans don't work and the self-compliance definitely doesn't work. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak?
I just have a question.
Is there anybody else from the public that would, yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'm not. I can't ask the question.
You can't ask a question. You can make a statement. You can't, we will not answer questions. This is a public comment period.
Can I just ask about your
answers? You can ask about the Zoom, go ahead.
Okay, you're putting up a Zoom meeting, is that public? Are they able
It's
to?
being taped. No, the public can't get in there, but it's being taped for people to see it.
Thank you for letting me ask a
Will
question.
will it be put to our page?
It goes automatically to the Kewaunee County homepage, and then you can click on live meetings, and then you can click it to watch it.
Is there anybody else?
Sorry, thank you.
No, you're, no worries.
Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I've been coming to these meetings. Can you get your name? Anna Franklin, Pine Grove Road. But I've been coming to these meetings for years now. Hear the same things over and over and over again, questions to this group. How do you ever get answers? And I know you can't answer me because that's a question, but what's the purpose of this? Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir, in the back.
Now, Prokash, NFP Tom. I'd like to second what Leanna just said. I've been staying away from these meetings because I got fed up years ago from the inaction, complete lack of action. You allow 20 minutes for people to give input, but you won't answer any questions. So when I do come to these meetings, I give 20 minutes of input, and I never see any kind of results, any kind of feedback, nothing. So what is the point?
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I rely on the tourist industry.
Can you state your name?
Oh, my name is Dana Rothman.
Thank
I'm from Algoma. I rely on the tourist industry quite a bit, and our beach is the biggest thing, one of the biggest things for our town. Last year, my sister came from out of town with her child. I didn't even want her to go in the water. Nobody's testing it, not. And I've seen what comes down those rivers. It's just, if even people started spreading that, what's going on with these rivers, there's gonna be no tourist industry, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't blame them. I mean, who wants their kids getting that stuff in their mouth and up their nose and bathe in it, basically? Come on. That's all I gotta say. And that's gonna hurt me in the bottom line and a bunch of other people, not just.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir. In the back.
Yes, I'm Terry Zarna, not a native, but I've been living out here now 35 years. I'm on the headwaters of the Kewaunee River, basically marshland. And I've been through some manure spills that run right through my land. It kills all the frogs, all the turtles, everything. And it comes back, and 10 years later, it's all wiped out again because I see groundwater and crap and stench running through it constantly. And especially with the runoff now that's happening from this last rain that we had. It seems like there's a rush to get the manure on the land right before the heavy rains come. And then it doesn't even have a chance to soak in. It just washes right down the rivers. And I just don't understand the practices of the farming, besides all the chemicals that's constantly being used on. I do a lot of gardening. I do a lot of organic gardening, and I'm just disgusted by how they're killing the land. That's what they're doing. They're just, I don't have nothing against farms. When I moved out there, the cows were out on the pastures grazing and that, and then things changed about 10 years after I was out there. It just, everyone went to the big farms, and the small farm, can't figure out why the small farms disappeared. Well, it's to me more greed than anything, and more to do with money. And you don't even care about the small farmer where you say you got their back. I do not see that at all. You drive them out of business, you buy their land, and then you rake the land and it's at all of our expense, and you get rich off of it, we don't. That's all I gotta say about it.
Else in the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Lynn Thompson, I just moved from 45 years in Casco to Luxembourg. Former teacher, grandmother, healthy person, trying to do everything I can do. Nothing. One by one, people I know are getting cancer and all kinds of diseases. Aren't people putting two and two together in the health of, and aren't some of you parents and grandparents as well? Doesn't that matter? Would you rather have money or the health of your family? Even the people who are supporting these big polluting efforts or lack of effort, whatever, however it results, but everybody has people they care about and don't want to see them get sick. And it's just 2 and 2 makes 4. It's just so obvious to me. And we're doing it to ourselves. I mean, not those of us that are involved in this. Ridiculous.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? I have a letter here I'm going to read from somebody that wrote in. This is from Tom Cretney. For Casco, I believe monitoring well installations are now needed to further define nitrate contamination affecting human health and well-being from drinking water. Samples collected from residential water wells identified a problem for residents of Casco. The county and the DNR have been aware of this issue for at least the past 5 years. Monitoring well installations are needed and should no longer be delayed by lack of understanding. Monitoring wells are used to determine the extent of contamination by establishing the groundwater flow velocity and direction of flow. The installation of monitoring wells will further define concentration contours to determine extent of contamination affecting residents and businesses of Casco. I'm a retired engineer formerly certified to prepare plans for remediation of soil, air, and groundwater in the state of Wisconsin. Tom Cretney. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes.
Nancy Utesh, Town of Pierce. You know, the time's over if everybody's not figuring it out up at the table. 17 people have literally dictated what's going to happen in this county. You know what? Everybody's done with it. We're done with it. We have new people that are finally coming to our community, new young people, excited about their dream of having a house in the country out here and everything. And, you know, here we have an opportunity, right? An aging community, which Kewaunee County is, to have new people, a new life, and new wonderful things going on. You know, when I read in the paper that we're going to have boats coming here, cruise ships coming to Kewaunee, really? I hope all of you do your agricultural tours with them. I really do. I hope that's part of the education plan. But I do want to say one thing that I'm truly disgusted with is the idea that there is information that is not getting to community members here. I asked this committee, and Scott Belt was CC'd on those requests. I asked the health department. We had very significant research done by Tucker Birch. And Aaron, I was quite surprised to see that you showed up with an industry person, Kim Bremer, to the Sturgeon Bay presentation, because I asked you to have it here. You didn't need to go to Sturgeon Bay. I asked you to have it here so the people here that are impacted, people like Arlie Carnop, who was part of that study, who him and his wife were impacted by spreading activities that made their household sick. I talked to Tucker Birch after that presentation, and he said, you know, I've never not been asked to speak in a community after I've done research. And I said, I'm really sorry about that, Tucker. But he did need to know that the health department and land and water was asked. I can go back in my emails, but I think it was 5 times that I requested that Tucker Birch be brought in to talk about the threats that exist in this community. And I think that it's only fair that you make sure the people who live here understand what's going on so that they don't come from somewhere else and say, hey, you know what? I fixed my child a bottle and I didn't know anything about blue baby syndrome. Or I didn't know that you're not supposed to boil water
It's high in nitrates. It makes it worse. And I know that there's plenty of people in this community that do not know about the health threats. And I think it's shameful that Land and Water and the Health Department did not co-jointly bring in Tucker Birch to talk about really important research that the people here need to know about. And I think that it's your responsibility sitting up there to represent the people in this community. 22,500 people, not the 17 interested parties that are making a living here, but the 22,500 other people that live here. Start representing the contingency of people that you are supposed to be a public servant to. Thank you.
Harry Hitchner, I'm on JJ Road. It just struck me now that if these boat tours do in fact come about the way they're saying, perhaps some organizations here should offer free bus tours of the Kewaunee County CAFOs and load people on buses and let them drive by some of these places and explain to them what they're doing to our wells. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Robert Sayers from Forestville. I just want to say something about the beaches, the E. coli pollution, and what the lady said earlier. I mean, I have read DNR reports, during the time of TMDL studies. People in Wisconsin can comment on it. And a couple of years back, from roughly, say, the 35 responses Wisconsin-wide, from all kinds of counties, about 20 of them were here from Kewaunee County, actually most of them Algoma, complaining about the beach. So this goes years back. I talked about it at the last presentation when the gentleman, I forgot his name, from UW Stevens Point made a presentation here in the big hall. And, Kevin Mazarek. And what is being done there? I mean, Crescent Beach, and not only Crescent Beach, I think even Selder Beach beats the records with very high E. coli, pollution, and actually many days so high that it is off the charts, that it even the lab test report identifies it as the max of their lab testing equipment. So this is going on now for years and years and years. So what are you gonna do about it? Did anybody even try to understand where the problem really comes from? Thank you.
Public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like, Christine Reed, Forestville. I would like to add to what Robert was just talking about. The situation with E. coli at the beach is so bad that the flag system that they've been using, green, it's safe to swim, yellow, swim at your own risk, red flag, no swimming. They're putting up electronic signs instead of using the flag system. They don't want to have to run out and change the flags at beaches. It's not like they're coming up with a solution to the problem. They're just making it easier to display the problem to the public. So, yeah, we definitely need to find a solution. If people come in on cruise ships and see a sign, an electronic sign that says, swim at your own risk or no swimming, why would they come here?
Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Yes.
Amanda Bonnet, I live in Algoma. I've lived on the Silver Creek River my entire life. And over the last 30 years or so, I've kind of watched that place become a toilet. Since, it's gotten really bad since they tore out the Bremerville Dam and the one in Forestville. My kids play in that water. They want to play in that water. We don't let them because now, come by my house, you can see brown running through the water. You can smell the water. You can smell manure in the water. And it's disgusting. My kids like to go down there with nets and, learn about things that are in the river. And I can't let them do that because it's polluted and gross. We have a notification system for our beach, red, green, yellow. But what about all the other waters that people tend to enjoy? And those tourists are going to pull up into our harbor and smell the air and want to turn around and get back on that boat and run away. Because you can't keep your windows open in the summer because all you smell is crap. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Hearing none, we will close that portion of the agenda and we'll move on to department reports. Turn it over to you, Davina.
So for animal waste storage permits, we only had one from the last month. Elna Farms is putting a new transfer pipe in from a new building that new barn that they are constructing. So that new transfer pipe will go to a pit that they already have in place. And our 151 update, Travis is making a lot of appointments, and actually this is one of the earliest times he got to start walking some fields early. So he is out walking fields. He's done some drive-bys for some manure that's being spread on greater than 20 feet, so that's allowed to be spread. So he's doing some audits, making sure that, driving by, making sure everything's going on good. So far, there's been no issues to date, but Saturday or Sunday will be open for everyone to be spreading. The ban is lifted on the 16th. Conservation plans for approval, 2 new farmland preservation certificates, so they're claiming the tax credit. Rebecca Disher and Kevin Vandertide, they're just small landowners who rent their land out, want to start claiming the credit, so we got them into compliance so they can claim the credit. As I just said, the public health and groundwater protection ordinance goes from no spreading on any waste less than 20 feet to bedrock. That is lifted on April 16th. I have had several calls and they wanted me to let the committee know that farms wanted it lifted. I told them that I don't have the approval for that and it has to go to committee. And I said, honestly, I wouldn't support it. It's almost the 16th. So, and we would have to put it on our public notice. So it would have to be public record for 7 days. So I told them that they cannot spread. Some of them said that they might. So we're watching those farms very carefully. I don't think they will, but I'm having Travis drive by some of those farms. And yeah, so I told them they can spread on Sunday. We usually don't get 80s in April, so this is kind of a different year. Nothing for chapter 39 updates. So no violations for 2023 so far, but we haven't had any manure spreading going on. So we'll be walking in those, and for the public listening, anytime you have manure or anything running down any type of waterway or ditch, call our office. I can have someone out there and we have the authority to take water samples and get them sent in. So call our office and we'll do the best that we can to get out there. Well testing, we did get funded for another 300 wells in July and another 300 wells in October. I technically wasn't eligible for another coastal management grant, so we ended up keeping the 2022 open and adding money that was returned from other grants to cover our costs. So very happy with another 600 wells. So 300 in July, 300 in October. I will be heavily hitting nitrates in this, and I will be heavily hitting Casco in both rounds. So Casco will be given priority in both of those wells sampling, and that will be a free cost. Our office has been very busy with zoning and sanitary. And Andrew in the office does all of our zoning, and Paul and Andrew has been doing sanitary. So we've already had 5 soil inspections, septic inspections, and 6 permit applications. On top of that, on March 6th, we sent out 20 letters to the landowners with withstanding 2018 and 2020 enforcements. So we're working with those 20 people. And in addition, on April 3rd, I sent another 41 letters, and those were to the landowners with withstanding 2021 enforcements. With Andrea leaving in 2022, we're working out how to, okay, I'm trying to understand her process of doing everything, which was a lot different. She was more of a paper person. I'm more of a spreadsheets. Now I have them all in spreadsheets, with all the dates and times. So we're gonna get those 21 enforcements and get the soil evaluations under the septic installs. I'm also going to start doing this year, because we have a number of septics that I don't have the list that are not in use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send letters to those people and just ask them to recertify in a letter back to our office that they're not in use. Some of the letters are from 13 and 14, so I just want to make sure that they're not in use. We do not have the time to drive in the winter months or any other months to monitor if someone's living in a house. We just do not have, that's time that I can't devote to that. So I'm just gonna have them, you know, and a lot of them have already been calling our office and they said, oh, yep, no problem, we'll send you a letter. And then we can have it on file, and I can do that every couple of years. So that'll kind of get that done a little bit better. The rest of April and May, I will be heavily devoting all my time to our 5-year Land and Water Resource Management Plan review. So Derek, you're new. Every 10 years, we have to write a new Land and Water Resource Management Plan. But every 5 years, we have to go back to DADCAP, because DADCAP pays for my position and then 70% of Paul's position. So we get DADCAP staffing grants, and we have to do work plans. We have to do 5-year reviews and then 10-year plans. So we're up for the 5-year review, which is mainly a lot of documentation and a lot of answering questions about what we've been doing, work plans, work review, goals, metrics, a lot. So the next month and a half of my life will be getting ready for that June 6th, going in front of that board for DADCAP. Along with that, I just submitted our staffing grant for 2024. That's been submitted to DADCAP. I submitted our work plan to DADCAP. Those are 2 things that we have to do in order to get our funding. I did our 5-year annual report submitted to Scott. I'm still waiting for the review of that. Once he gives me the okay, that's his new template that he is working with us. Once I get that approved, I will be sending that out to the committee. It has all of the work that we've been doing in the last 5 years. And yeah, there's quite a bit of work. Let's see. We're submitting a DNR grant for LeCaptain. He's a small 50-herd dairy for a manure storage project. That's what the resolution is for later on. We're doing a trim grant through the DNR. Paul's currently designing 2 manure storages, one for LeCaptain and one for Chuck Hinnard, both smaller farms. LeCaptain has no storage. Chuck Hinnard he's been impacted by the Solarian standards, so we're trying to get him some more storage capacity. So we're hoping both of those will be cost shared. And on top of that, so far I've mapped 120 nutrient management plans into GIS. We get about 272 a year. What I'm doing different this year is I also put in the soil or the rotation of the crops, but I'm also going back as far as I can and putting in the tillage so that I can pull that into a database and actually see how many are planned for cover crops or no-till. So we can start getting some kind of baseline because we don't have any. I know Peninsula Pride has some, and I know that FSA has them, but FSA is federally protected and can't give any of that data to us. So this is my way of trying to track some. I've been driving a lot. My daughter's on the soccer team, and we've been driving to a lot of different counties for games. I have to say that I'm very happy with a lot of our land is covered compared to some other counties. So compared to 10 years ago, we've definitely been making progress. There's more to be done, and there's still a lot that fall plow or spring plow, and we're working on them. So we have been doing a lot, and we do have a small staff, and I believe we've been working really hard to get a lot of this done. We'll talk about Casco later. I think that's kind of it for now, unless you guys have questions.
Questions? There's nothing, then we'll move on to cooperating agencies. Jason Berman, our CS, was unable to make it. Erica's out. Her copper sulfate study is wrapping up. She should have the results of that here in the next month or so.
And I had the website for that on last month's minutes, so.
Okay. Yeah, USDA, nothing with them.
He probably won't be back until fall, so.
Okay. Other agency organizations, Derek, is there anything from FSA? If you had meetings or?
No, we haven't had a meeting since last one. Canceled this morning just because there was really nothing new to go over.
I guess I could say Glacierland, RC&D, our office is partnering with them for the invasive species, since we kind of like partner with them and then they do the work, and it's a really nice partnership. So they're going to be doing Phragmites control, and they're going to be sending out letters for landowners who want to get their Phragmites sprayed and controlled. And then we will also be doing some work with purple loosestrife. And we will also be working again this summer with the Clean Boats, Clean Water. So that went really well last year. I have the statistics in our annual report, so that will all be provided to you guys once we have that. But Glacierland hires some, or they have volunteers and they do the Clean Boats, Clean Water. They've been picking different lakes, little inland lakes. So it's been going really well.
We did do a 3-year Glacierland on the Phragmites quite a few years back. Wasn't it a 3-year project?
Yes, and I think we just got funded again through the DNR for another 3-year project. She hasn't, Carrie Devine has not gotten back to me yet, but we're partnering with, in the grant, and I don't know if the grant agreement's been coming out yet, but we're partnering with us, Highway Department, and then Glacierland. Highway, we're gonna work on different mowing schedules so that we can get it treated before they mow, or mowing around it so we can try to control it a little bit better in the county. So those are just more grants that we have been submitting and working on in the office.
Well, if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item number 8, the Village of Casco Nitrates. Davina and I had a chance to have a call with Mike from Dragon on next steps of where we want to kind of take this. And I think I'll turn it over to Davina. He has some good ideas.
Yeah, I'll try to give a baseline of what we've been doing in the last couple months. So Public Health did send out a letter, an information letter about nitrates, had English and Spanish in there at the request of the village. So that was sent out to everyone in the village. At the end of March, I have been briefing the EPA on the Village of Casco nitrate issue. I am now having quarterly updates with EPA. Victoria Heath is who I am talking to. So we'll be on conference calls quarterly discussing what we've been finding. If there's anything done, what we've been doing to this point, next steps. And when they see if they can fit in, they may have some funding. They're not sure yet, but at least they can jump in and help if they find the time or find a project that they can mend with, but I'm keeping them up to date on everything. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but you talked to the 2 farms and they're not going to spread any manure in 2023 on the adjacent fields?
That's correct.
Okay. In 2022, the farms voluntarily decreased the manure on the 2 square miles in section 7 and section 8 by 74% from what was spread in 2021. Again, everything they did spread was in compliance. So we got a 75% reduction, and hopefully this year we'll have 100%. So it'll be really neat testing in July. Because I don't know, I mean, I'm really good with bedrock and Silurian and fracture traces. And because I've spent 10 years studying Lincoln Township and Red River Township. So this is a little bit different, and I'm trying to learn a lot about it fast. Because sands and gravel and mixed with fractured bedrock underneath moves very differently. And contaminants in Silurian can move very fast. You can spread manure and you can have it coming out your tap within hours. This is very different. So we're not sure of what that time of capture zone and the time of nutrient movement is. So with the decrease in manure, because our manure hits were from, or waste hits manure or human, which they have public sanitary. I'm wondering if they're gonna start going down as we're seeing the decrease in manure on those fields. So it's something, that's why I keep picking July. Some people don't like July, but we've had 2 years of July and we can compare those year to year. We've been talking with USGS Maureen Muldoon, which she has probably done the most testing in Door County and Kewaunee County and understands groundwater flow probably better than anyone around here. Dragon, and then we've been talking with the Marshfield Lab. Borkhardt is, even though he's retired, he's one of my mentors, and I've been getting his information and Joel's from the lab. And the consensus seems to be, we really need to know, we need a groundwater flow model. We really need, and it can be a quick and dirty one, to capture the zone of contaminants, because we have one house here, one house here. The geology is exactly the same. They're cased to the same depth. And all I can see, and I sent them around to the committee, was I pulled all the GIS photos back to like 1938. And if you look in that subdivision, there's constantly a huge wet area right in the middle of that subdivision. So we're looking at that to see, and there's lots of them throughout the fields, which is very common of like closed depressions. And sometimes these closed depressions have fracture traces that are located under them. So I don't know if these fracture traces could be linked to these different closed depressions, and nutrients are getting into a closed depression, hitting a fracture trace, and then coming up in that one area in the middle of that subdivision. This definitely has some of the people that are, you know, I have 2 hydrogeologists, not hydrologists, but hydrogeologists, looking at a lot of this. Dave Hart from USGS. I'm working with Randy Hunt now from USGS and Maureen Muldoon on top of Dragon, just because they know the area really well. And some of them are kind of stumped at the reason that adjacent houses with the same exact bedrock or topography, soil geology are completely different. So we've been looking at the different air photos. So getting a groundwater model, I can work with USGS. However, they don't do small model targeting because that's the work of a private consultant. And USGS, this is an email from Randy Hunt, does not compete with the private sector. But one thing that they can do, because we just got the airborne geophysics data, that the airplane that flew over with the cool disc to try to do some radar penetrating to get bedrock, is that we can partner with them to get more of a regional model that would include Casco. And then that could be used for a starting point for more local investigations. That's an 18-month process, so I don't want to, I want to start this, but I also want to start and potentially get like some private engineers or private consultants to do like a little down and dirty, I'm going to explain what I mean by that, groundwater model in Casco, especially the northern part, so we can figure out the capture zone, the flow, the time and travel, the direction, and understand what's upfield from that and then target those fields. Because right now we're kind of targeting 2 square miles. So we need to kind of cut that down. What I mean by a fast and easy way, this is something that Maureen Muldoon came up with, and she's done this in other areas. The fastest way to get an easy groundwater model is with permission. Literally hiring a licensed plumber to remove the caps of wells, and you stick a measuring tape down there and get as many wells as you possibly can. You measure the depth of water. If all of those wells, if we can get the new subdivision, we can get some of the southern ones that are just south of Highway 54. And then you get the elevations of all the surface water that you can possibly get in the village of Casco. And they can do a pretty good groundwater model from that information. Now, with putting a measuring tape down the well, it would have to be a licensed plumber that would have to remove the cap, put the cap back on, and they would have to disinfect the well. So there's a lot more to that, but it's a lot better in information than taking well drilling reports that go back over a long period of time and saying, okay, your groundwater was here, 50 feet here, but then 3 years later over here at this house, it was 10. That doesn't give us an accurate reading. We can do that. It just doesn't give us as accurate of what we're looking for in that. So that is definitely a possibility. That would have to be hired out. Like I said, we secured funds for July and October of 2023. I've also been talking with the different labs in USGS Dragon. And we also want to do some artificial indicator testing. We want to make sure we rule out human totally. You've done the cameras and that shows, if you want to understand, but we want to make sure that there's no leaking from below. And that part of the human indicators would be like caffeine, depression medicine. There's like a whole bunch of them that would not be in cows. And then on the other side, we would run herbicides that would only be used for cattle. Just trying to get it a little bit more pinpointed down. It's $250 a well. So if we could do 20 wells, it'd be $5,000, but that would give us a really good snapshot of the whole village of the top portion. And I'm hoping possibly public health would have some money for that. So we'll be talking about that later. The groundwater model, we're going to need more information on logistics and who's going to be doing it. I'm not a qualified hydrogeologist, so measuring well depth and water in wells that's beyond my expertise. And USGS can't do that part. So I did get that information. So there might be something that we can get a different consultant. I really would like to know the village's decisions in any of this. I know that I've been asked by other people who have wanted to not stay where they're from or what their affiliation in the county is, but they're understanding that our office is putting a lot of money into or I should say the ARPA funds are putting a lot of information into just the village of Casco when there's other issues also. I don't only work with the village of Casco. I work with, all the Solarian people that have, we haven't had E. coli hits in actually quite a while, which has been really nice. And the ones that we have had, we're not linked to spreading of manure, thankfully. And we've only had like 1 or 2 in the past year with the huge testing that we've done. But our office for the last 5 to 10 years, we've been working in the Solarian. We've been working after Mark Borkhardt did all those studies. We've been working on getting the new regulations, and we got them. And then we adopted them in, I think, October of 18. So 19 and 20 was a pandemic, and we couldn't even really come into the office. So 19 and 21, we've been working our butts off trying to get the implementation of the Solarian dolomite. And now we have actual data that shows in 0 to 5 feet bedrock and 0 to 2 feet for sure, that we're getting substantial improvement in the groundwater in those areas. So, and I don't know if this is a result of some of that, but there is you can't spread manure here, but you're putting it onto different locations. They're moving it around to areas that may not have had it before. So we don't know if there's cause and effect relationship in that. So now we're starting to look at nitrogen a little bit more in our office. There will not be any new regulations or rules for nitrogen. That DNR tried through NR 151 and that was rejected. So what the farmers are doing from us are all on a voluntary basis. That's going above and beyond their permits and their NR 151 rules. So that was a lot, but that's what I've been trying to figure out. I don't know if you want to talk about the village and where you get, that's what I've been looking into. So
Could I ask?
One question of clarification
Sure.
on the differentiation between human
Yes,
and potentially dairy.
yes,
You said herbicide. Is that what you meant to say? Or
yes,
so it would be herbicide chemicals used on the field for?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, because the MST testing, we want to try to get stuff that's in the water currently. And with MST testing, the stuff that like Mark did, there's the whole debate on live versus not live cultures. So we figured if we did this and these tests would go through UW Stevens Point. Kevin Massard would be, their lab would be testing them. So the same lab that tests all of our water on a regular basis. They have the whole slew of tests that say, yes, it is human, yes, it is bovine. Yep.
Thank you.
Tim, what are your thoughts? I know you guys had a.
We did. We had a village board meeting last night, and at the meeting last night, at the meeting the previous month, I brought up the idea of what Davina just talked about with trying to figure the flow of the water, narrowing it down a little bit. I put it out there to the village residents that were at the village board meeting 2 months in a row. Some of them seemed like they'd be willing, but that's why some of them are here tonight. They want to know what their next step is. Do they need to call Land and Water and say, yes, I'm willing to do that? Do they need to contact the village and say, yes, we're willing to do that?
Call our office, because then I can get and look at wells that are willing to participate, and then we can figure out costs and, you know, if it's only 5 wells that are going to participate or versus 10, that's going to be different cost estimates. We have to get cost estimates in order to be able to do anything, because I don't have I don't have funding, so
And I think in
kind of
our,
relying on someone's big money back there, so.
in the conversations we had with Mo and Dragan, I think we'd like to see 10 wells in that area. The more wells we
The
can get.
more the better, and we
better
have
that
to get
modeling will
them.
be.
Mo said the water level measurements collected within 1 to 2 days in the wells, and then getting all the surface water would give us a really good indication of what's going on, because it's so heteros. It's such a melting, mixing pot of sands, gravels, clay is in there. It's such a mishmash posh of soils that it just acts so differently than the bedrock area. So, and that's why they think, you know, one well is safe and the other one's not, and it could be linked to those really wet areas. So
When, Davina, would you like folks to come in? We have to put some sort of date. Do you want the phone call within a week? Do you want the-
they can tell me tonight. They can, yeah, the sooner the better. I mean, I think if we can get, I want to say, I mean, because we need some across the road too, because they're having really big issues. You know, groundwater is moving right now. Frost is out. The sooner the better, so I can at least get some cost estimates together. I mean, as long as I start building a list, I can use that list for as long as the conversations keep starting or keep going.
There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Davina, after that, if that happens and we can find 10 to 15 to 20 wells, folks in that area, because obviously not everybody in the village of Casco is affected.
Correct.
Not everybody in that subdivision.
Correct,
So,
but the people that are not impacted in the village, in those high
Yes.
areas, it's very important to get those wells. It's not just the impacted, because we need to know what's going on across the street from neighbors.
So the ones that are showing absolutely no traces of nitrates, but their neighbors 2 houses
Correct.
down have a
Correct.
35.
Yep.
Just so.
And we'd also want to test, when I've been talking with Kevin Massard's lab, when we do like the human bovine indicators, also test wells that haven't had a really high, just to see what they're doing because of the neighborhood and the fact that they're across the street from each other.
The question did come up last night and I answered it the way I think I was supposed to, but correct me if I was wrong. The question came up from a homeowner. If we're going to allow this and we're going to have somebody come in and pull my well cover off, and drop a tape measure down there and then bleach my well, is there any sort of guarantee that, is the county going to give me any guarantee that I'm not going to have problems with my well after? My answer to them was, we can't predict what's gonna happen to your well in 2 years' time.
Right, you know, the disinfectant, the licensed well driller disinfect wells all the time. So we would have a licensed well driller to do the work. So it wouldn't be me, which I would never guarantee, because I've never disinfected a well before. I've tested hundreds of them. But we would have a licensed plumber who is allowed to do the disinfecting.
And this disinfectant does nothing for the nitrogen standpoint, it's just E.
No,
coli and coliform.
it's because you're shoving a foreign thing down there and they could be getting bacteria in there. So they would want to make sure that there's no bacteria.
And they would need to run their well after that.
Yes, the licensed plumber would give them all that information of how long to run it, correct?
So that would be the next step, really, that you believe from what you. all the
It's the
research-
fastest way of getting a really good groundwater model, if you don't want to wait a long time. If you want to wait longer, I've already pulled all the well records. The newer wells are not on, the ones that were just drilled that have no houses on them, or currently are building houses, I don't have those at the DNR yet. So the other way would be going through all those wells and making an assumption map based on well depths that were recorded at the time of the well drill.
And then after that, that's a question, an open-ended question, what then?
Right, so from my talking with people that are, have better degrees than I do in hydrology or hydrogeology, that would give us, they're saying that that's the fastest way that we can get the groundwater to delineate. They wanted from Mark and Mo that I've been talking with, capture zone, that'll give us a capture zone. It's kind of like where that plume is moving. And if we can get that capture zone, they can do time versus travel of contaminants. They can get the direction, and then those are the fields that we start targeting heavily. So say it's all these fields up here. Well, right now we're targeting all these fields. And maybe these fields aren't the ones that we should be targeting, and maybe they should be these ones up here. So it'll give us a better direction instead of just blatantly saying, okay, all these fields, you can't, we're asking you voluntarily not to do anything with. So. And I am not a modeler, and I do not have a degree in hydrogeology. So I am working with hydrogeologists, but I'm learning a lot on my way. I'm trying to supply you guys with the best information that I get. So.
Well, I think some of the things we could do in the beginning too, was conversation came up with Mike too, is, I mean, we could start watering lawns, we could start running these wells in summer here and see if that lowers nitrates in the meantime, while we're working on this project too. I mean, we've known with the Casco daycare, theirs has been cleaned now for a while. We don't know why.
Well, and this is only what I've seen and I cannot prove it, but as more wells go in this subdivision, the daycare gets better. And I had a long talk about the daycare with EPA and your struggles and everything about that. And I can talk to you afterwards about that. But, and that may, and like I've been talking about, like what Mark and Mo, with more houses going in where it's been considerably wet. I mean, since the 1938, which is the oldest photo that we can do it. And maybe that's that area. And that could be a really good explanation to why the sump pumps are only running in that wet area, because it's a closed depression area. I don't know that for sure, but.
Has that area been built up now, Tim? Where that closed would, when we talk about that closed depression area was lower in there. Was that fill hauled in?
I don't think in any of your new homes, or can you say, I don't believe any dirt was brought in to any of those homes. I think what was dug out for basements was used.
I mean, it's kind of hard to see, but this is 1967 when it was all farmed. I can't talk. So the roads aren't there, but we overlaid them. I mean, there's huge wet spots right in the middle there. And what I mean middle is in between Rayburn, Cortland, and McIntosh. This is 1992, and there's just, very wet spots 2005, it looks kind of like a little swamp in there. So that could explain that area of why that's impacted, and then it's drier across the road. I don't know, but I have people that are way smarter than I am looking at all of this data, including Mo and Mark, and I've been pulling Mark out of retirement on a private, personal matter because, yeah, their eyes are better than mine when I'm looking at all this, so.
So I think if we can have some homeowners reach out to Davina to set that up, try to get some well depths.
And if you're interested in doing the human indicators and herbicides, call me so I can at least start and I can.
We can get a budget together then, once we know.
Yeah, I know
many
how
people
much
want to participate.
those will cost, so I can talk with, our ARPA fund lady and see how much we can possibly get. The more wells, the better, because I can do a bigger area, and be all north of Casco, but even in Tim's area, you know, we have higher wells on the east side of the east north. We have some higher wells, so.
Do you know the cost of a nitrate test? If we were just to do a nitrate test on a few, the reason I ask is I did have some well work done a few years back, had to disinfect my well. I don't believe it's out of question for that well to run 4 to 6, maybe even a half day, you know, until it clears up. One of the recommendations to, I believe, the daycare center was to utilize water, and that resulted in nitrates dropping. Can we prove or, you know, disprove that? But if a simple nitrate test at the time of opening the well cap or just prior to that is cheap, and then that landowner, well owner is going to have to disinfect that well for 4 to 6 hours. If we're talking about $20, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah,
pre and
I
post.
think nitrates through Stevens Point is 22-ish. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility. And with the indicator test, we would run nitrates with that as well. And then we'd get the nitrates in July and October. So we'd have more, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're working in the well, we can grab a samples and do a pre and post.
There is a company that moved into Kewaunee County now, into the city of Kewaunee. I believe that he is doing this. They're gonna be up and running by next week with nitrates, is that correct?
I don't know about nitrates. Cindy, do you know about nitrates with them? I know they just got approval to do bacteria.
Those Whitewater labs.
Yes, Whitewater
They
labs.
are located, thank you, I got lost today trying to find them. So they are located in Kewaunee, where the pharmacy used to be downtown by Harbor Express across the street. They're in the back part of that building. They are doing E. coli and coliform bacteria testing right now, and I believe hoping sometime maybe next week to be up and running for nitrates. And if you give me just 1 second, Jerry and Tony are sitting in the middle of the room right here, and they are the owners of that lab.
So that's another lab that we have right in our area, that if we wanted to do quick samples of bacteria and nitrates, yeah, well, not really bacteria, because we've had no bacteria hits in there. But as we are pulling the wells, we have bottles in our office for their lab, and so does public health. We can easily run those through that lab at that point.
So Davina, all the other things that we talked about, throwing in some high pressure wells, those are things I think that the recommendation is we hold off on. I was looking for a immediate fix. I think we had talked about that. Let's get some water running.
I don't know if there's an immediate fix from what I've been hearing from, again, those that are way smarter than I am. Because there's wells acting differently in the same aquifer and in the same section. They don't want to put necessarily, I think if we did monitoring wells, we'd have to do a large number of them in different locations and also through the fields to see what's happening. Placing one well and running it, I don't know if that would just be an expensive experiment. I don't know what that would do to the nitrates. I don't know if it would dilute it. I don't know if it would, because I don't know where they're coming from. So yeah, they kind of said they would put their money in more of the testing in the groundwater model. But with monitoring wells, you would have to get permission from the farms. And then again, we'd have to have the groundwater flow model, because you don't want to put a monitoring well in an area where nothing is being impacted at all, because then you're just wasting money. So I think if we can get this groundwater flow model, we'll have a better indication. Instead of targeting 2 square miles, we can maybe target 100 and some acres or 80 acres. I don't know. But that's from what I've been learning in this.
And for the Village of Casco, I know the discussion has been brought up from other folks in Kewaunee County, which is legitimate. Yes, the Village of Casco and the town of Casco is getting the publicity right now, is getting more help, and there are issues in other part of Kewaunee County. That's no doubt. So the village appreciates it. The village is willing to do whatever the village can to try to help and put that out there already. We just need to know what. We've talked about, we've called our engineer, we've called Cedar Corp. We've looked at, we don't have the numbers yet, of actually putting up a water tower. I know our forefathers did not do it in the Village of Casco. The Village of Casco has always been a very slow growing municipality. It's always been about 556 people. We've just jumped to 645 people, which is wonderful. We're getting a lot of folks coming in from Green Bay, from different areas, and that's great. So we are looking into that. I don't know financially if it would be feasible, but just so folks don't think, why aren't you putting up a municipal water?
And there might be federal money and maybe even the EPA. That might be a question.
It's not off the table. It's just that everybody knows that is being taught.
So I think our next thing is I can talk to Cindy and see if I can get at least $5,000 and work on getting the human indicators and the herbicides, get those tested, and then at the same time, see if we can get people that are wanting to participate in this easy groundwater model. If we get enough, great, we'll do it. I know it's the whole part of disinfecting a well. I know it's kind of a hassle, but it does give us the best information. Or else we can work on the well reports to get the groundwater model at the same time. I think that's our next step.
You said there were some wells that were drilled in the last year that are out. They are not up on the DNR's website, but would you be able to access that information from the DNR if you needed to?
I'm trying to get a hold of the person. So we used to work with Sarah Fry. She just left. She was our groundwater contact. She left for another position at the DNR. So we have a new person in the DNR who is trying to get caught up. So yeah. I mean, I have probably 75 to 80% of the well logs in that northern part of Casco. So it's just the recent ones that Dragon wanted to look at that aren't on there yet.
Any other questions on that agenda item? You feel comfortable moving forward with that?
For other matters, I just wanted to touch on the Kennard thing too, because that's been coming up a lot. Kennards are working with Cedron. Cedron is a nutrient removal company or technology that's going to be turning manure into a water. That water is being discharged. Our office has no authority or regulation or enforcement over that at all. DNR has full authority over that. Our office we don't work with surface water because DNR has authority. So that has to go through the permit, which is their DNR permit. So that would go through DNR. DNR is the permittee that allowed or is going to allow the discharge. I don't know how much it is. I don't know how much water is going to be going down the Casco Creek, but that's definitely something that the DNR should have. So that would be going through their office.
I mean, I guess maybe you said, I interpreted what you
No,
said,
go
as they
ahead.
were taking all the manure and turning it into water. They're actually taking the solids out of it. They're
Correct.
selling the solids to Home Depots, Menards for bag fertilizer, big companies.
I
And
just
then-
meant their end product out of it is.
So they're sort of turning a large, like a sewer plant, like we have in the Village of Castle,
Correct.
like our wastewater plant. They're taking we take human sewage and process it and do everything we need to, and then we discharge into the Casco Creek. They're doing it on a huge scale for animals.
Yes, and I don't know a lot of what that entails just because our office doesn't permit it. And we have an office of 5 or 6 people, so, and The DNR holds their permits. The DNR is the one that does all the authority. The DNR does all surface water, beaches, rivers, streams. Our office doesn't do that. We do the groundwater. Anytime that the only time we ever do surface water testing is if there's a spill and we take water samples just to show that there was E. coli. That is the only time we do surface water testing of any kind in our office.
Move on to item number 9, then, we got an action item of government responsibility resolution for the DNR runoff management grants.
Yes, so I am submitting our office is submitting a targeted runoff management grant that's called a TRIM grant through the DNR. I need permission to submit and sign the grant to DNR and be the local government. We've done probably 30 or 40 TRIM grants in my time at the office. Our last one was signed under John Hagel, so it's no longer valid. So we need an updated one in order for me to submit this grant. The grant is 100% reimbursable. We don't actually touch, or the money doesn't even get funneled really through us. We cut checks. So the farm gets 70% up to a certain limit. They pay the 30%. We do the grant, submit the grant, sign the grant application. If they are funded, then we can do the reimbursement, the claims. They have to submit all their bills to us, and we do a reimbursement. So it's kind of like our SWRM, but a little bit more money.
So I would need a motion on that then.
How long is that authority effective then? Is it, I mean,
Well, we had one under Wagner, and then once he left the board, then it was null. And then we had one under John Hagel, and then he passed away, so that one's null. So it kind of stays with as long as you're the chair. So I think it's the chair. Yep. So we don't have to put a date on it. I use the exact wording that the DNR uses, which is pretty simple. So there's not an end date as long as Aaron's still our chair. So if the chair changes whenever the next election is, then we have to do it.
I'll make a motion that we give Davina the authority to apply for the grant and move forward with the DNR and the TRIM grant process.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So I just need your signature.
We can move on to scheduling of future meetings.
So we have May 9th at 8:15. And then the next one would be June 13th. And then that would be at 8:15. So I think if we had a great turnout tonight. If we do the night meetings quarterly, I think that would probably work. So we'd be looking at a quarterly night meeting probably in July, which would be good because then school's out. So it'd be May 9th at 8:15, and then the second Tuesday would be June 13th at 8:15.
We can discuss the July meeting.
Yeah, we can look at dates because it probably won't work on Tuesdays, but we can look at the night meeting for July and then look at dates closer to.
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. With that, I'll need a motion for adjournment.
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Adjourned at 7:25.